Hello and welcome back to New Number Ones for the week of August the 19th, 2026. My name is Corey and you're here with me now. And the pick of the week comes from Mad Cave Studios is Lazarus Order, number one, written by Sloane M. Siegel, illustrated by Juan Doe, and with characters designed by Benjamin J. Stockham. I wanted to call out all three names because they are all three credited as the creators of the series. I want to make sure they all got equal credit. Um, that being said, this is going to be an interesting review, I think, because of a sidebar, real quick. I've watched a lot of people who write reviews or who make videos where they review things, and sometimes I feel like they don't quite understand what the objective of being a critic is. The objective is not to speak to what is according to your tastes, what you like and what you don't like, but it's to speak to the technical components of what the work is, as well as did they accomplish what they set out to do in your interpretation. That's really what it is. It's not about like, oh, I liked this or I didn't like this. This isn't my kind of thing. This isn't my kind of thing. It's quite literally like, did they do what they wanted to do well and concisely? So, that being said, when we talk about a new number one, we always look for three things. We look at, do we have an established main character? Do we have an established world? And is there enough meat on the bone that makes you want to keep reading? So that being said, Lazarus Order is set in a sort of pseudo-Victorian time period, as the Plague Doctor mask would give you a bit of an indication of. And it is about a group, the sort of secret order of doctors who are kind of magicians, spell sorcerers that seem to draw on their own blood to cast spells that takes years off of their life. And it appears to be somewhat of a religious order as well. And our main character is Damien, who is very strict and abides to the rules of this order, along with his partner Edward, I believe, who is a little more laissez-faire because he's been doing it a little bit longer. Uh, Not a bad little setup there for a main character. You know, he's young, he's naive, he wants to do everything by the book and perfect, and you have like the older guy who's been there and done that and a little reluctant. That's totally fine. The world that they're in, we do get introduced to a lot of rules, and we learn about the things that break those rules along with the main character in this big this fight. This story is predominantly one scene. It is a very long fight sequence between Damien and this man who's been transformed into like a rat human hybrid. And that's totally fine. It's a very action oriented book, and therefore there should be quite a bit of action in it. We also get some scenes where the rat man, discovers why he's been transformed and to serves a higher purpose. Then we get introduced to some very ominous characters towards the end. So we have a very kind of big world to play in that has a lot of rules. The supernatural seems to be something that is agreed upon and normal, but even then, there's a limitation to that, as this new thing has completely thrown our main characters for a loop. I get it, totally fine. We have this mystery of this upcoming sort of war between the rat people and the rest of the world that seems to be hinted at. That's totally fine as well. So when we look at, is this a good number one based off our three tenets? I think you can say that it does the job. Damien is a bit of a weak main character, but that's sort of the character that you grow along with as you read it. So I think that's totally fine. So, from a writing objective, objective, that's the word, book hits it. What I will say that one of the other strengths is I really like the color palette that is being played with in this book as well. It is predominantly green, black, and red and orange. So I enjoy when a book that is establishing itself has its own sort of distinct color palette to play with. It reminds me of Francesco Francavilla's work, who we looked at a couple of weeks ago with a book with R.L. Stine. And when you have these sort of set color palettes, anything that's out of the ordinary is going to stand out a little bit. Like in this scene here where we have some blue getting thrown in there that completely stands out from the rest of the very dark palette around it. So, that being said, objectively, the book hits its marks when it comes to being a good number one. Let's talk about taste, though. I did not care for this story. And that, like I said, that is my just personal opinion on it. I think this was going to be a hard follow-up from last week's Gastronomique, which I thought did a lot of really unique and different things in the world of independent comics, whereas this is kind of you see a lot of stories that are like plague doctor masks and were creatures, and there's a Frankenstein and a witch and a vampire or whatever at the end of it. Like there's a lo- there's a lot of it that borders on the realm of cliche and on the nose, and that's fine. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. That's just the fact of the matter. And I'm not going to deduct points from this book because it's not to my taste. Like I said, I didn't care for reading it, but it hit its marks, and you can't fault it for that. So if you are the type of person that's going to be into somewhat of a supernatural story that is set in the Victorian era, if you love that time period, this is probably a really great read for you. If you like the art style, it's a little cartoony for my taste for like a subject matter that's all about dealing with like, and speaking of plagues and the war of humanity and what have you, that might be your thing too. And if so, great. But that being said, this isn't a book that I'm going to want to continue reading. Great work, regardless. They did everything they set out to do, in my opinion. But it's just not something that I'm interested in. So that being said, that's going to do it for this week. I will see you guys next week for another new number one. Goodbye.